Good. Hi everyone, welcome to the Elendi Files, where we navigate the complexities of the global regulatory landscape of medical products. Our goal is to make global medical product regulations accessible to everyone. Whether you are a manufacturer, intermediary, regulatory specialist, or CEO of a MedTech startup, you're in the right place. Be sure to connect with us on LinkedIn and our website, ElendiLabs.com. This is Teddy, the General Manager of ElendiLabs. At ElendiLabs, we're all about connecting clients, be it medical product manufacturers, MedTech startups, biotech startups, with the right regulatory expertise to get products to people faster. Today, I'm really thrilled to be joined by Flavia and Mike from Sobel, a firm that helps to navigate the complexities of the Brazilian market. We're going to be spending some time learning more about the regulation landscape in Brazil and the Brazilian Health Authority, ANVISA. And Flavia and Mike, thanks for being here to kick things off. Could you give us a brief introduction of what Sobel specializes in?
Hi, Teddy. Thanks for being here. It's a pleasure to meet you and talk a bit more about the Brazilian landscape. The regulatory landscape and difficulties and how we work here in Brazil. Sobel, it's a regulatory and scientific support consultancy company. We are not focusing only on the regulatory and submission part in key markets all over the globe, but we are also having a scientific part where we support especially clients with needs in the biological, toxicological, and clinical evaluation part, because usually these expertise are missing in the standard regulatory companies. So for me, in the beginning, it was very clear we need to include this in our services so that we have at the end the full package and solve the most urgent issues and problems of the clients who try to submit their devices.
Is that like clinical research organization? CRO, clinical trial?
Not 100%, because we are not active in clinical trial management yet, but we are working closely on that. So I think soon we have maybe some surprises in this field as well.
Okay, good. And any other services offered?
Yeah, of course, as you can imagine, these fields that I mentioned are very vast. So that means we have specialists. They support you with the standard submissions in Brazil, in other markets, US, Europe, Middle East, India, China as well. So whatever is needed. We support not only medical device companies, but also in other sectors as well, like cosmetics, IVDs, for example. Pharma is also ongoing and soon available officially. Then we have the representative services. I think this is for many companies extremely important because many markets all over the globe, if you have not a present in a certain market, you need a strong partner who represents you there. Of course, we can offer this as well where needed, for example, like markets in Brazil. And the other side, the scientific part, we have here more complex questions like, for example, biological evaluation support, where we create the full documentation with our specialists. We have toxicologists, biologists, chemists in-house, where we support clients with these specific needs. Toxicological evaluation, when you have substances in your product that are not very common and you need to evaluate them, we can do this in-house. And then the biggest part, usually the clinical evaluations, they are usually the most complex documents you need to create. Of course, we can support with that with in-house specialists. And of course, we have, if necessary, give support with clinical trials, but this is nothing managed yet officially internally at Sobel, but we definitely can support with that as well.
So basically, Sobel's like a global company that provides services in like China, Latin, Europe, US, the major countries, and then it offers a very comprehensive services like toxicology, biological evaluation, clinical evaluations, and local representations and registration. I think that's really comprehensive.
Yes, that's totally correct.
It comes in
and
handy.
Also, just compliment, at Maik told us that with our support, you and the global way with audits, remote audits to QMS, to MDSAP, FDA, all regulations, and we have gap analysis solution. We have strategic solutions for audit, and to support in certification way too.
Okay, good. So so your services also include post-market surveillance and audit preparation and everything related to QMS, quality management system, right? The CAPA,
exactly,
non-conformance reports.
Yeah,
good. Okay,
it's good that you're mentioning this, because usually this is I was focusing on the initial part, but you're absolutely right. When products are on the markets, usually the clients often they have issues, not because of the registration itself, but if they have with their product some complaints or any updates on the documentation that is necessary, because all the time the regulatory landscape is changing, new standards, new regulations, and usually the need is high to adapt the documentation, the underlying documentation. So, and of course we are supporting with this.
So good. I think it comes in handy if a client has so many different needs across different aspects. So they just have to shout out to Sobel, and then it will come to their rescue, right? It's really good.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Okay.
We thought about a rescue service. Maybe this is a good idea. We decided to implement this to call where you can call 24/7 or around the clock, where we can help them if they have an issue. Maybe this is a good marketing idea.
So Sobel does have a very strong supporting team in order to provide services constantly, around the clock. Yeah, good. And that's a great foundation, and we get to know more about what Sobel can offer. How about let's dive a bit deeper. What are the timelines and cost like for registering a Class 1 medical device in Brazil? Is it Class 1 or Class A medical device in Brazil?
1. We have
Class 1.
In Brazil, we have the classification from 1 to 4.
1 to 4, okay. And then, what are the timeline and the cost like for registering, like the lowest risk?
For Class 1, for Class 1, it's pretty straightforward in Brazil. I don't want to compare it to Europe, because Europe is a different league at the moment, but Brazil has a very lean process for Class 1 and 2 devices. It's basically they have 2 pathways. One is the notification for a lower risk class product, and it's called the registration, or registro. That's the name in Portuguese in Brazil, for Class 3 and 4. For the notification pathway is pretty fast. You prepare a simplified submission documentation where you don't need to hand all the documentation. You have a certain compilation, reduced submission file. Usually the timeline is, when you look on our side, we are talking about 2 or 3 weeks, but including already the communication with the client, because it's you need to collect the documentation and then from the client, and then you need to prepare the submission file, and then you hand it over to ANVISA, and ANVISA has a timeline from 30 days, but usually they are faster. They said, okay, within 30 days we give you a decision.
30 days.
So that means within 1 month you have a decision from ANVISA, and as soon as the decision is made, you can sell your product on the market. So this is a very fast process.
Is it
compared to other
costly?
markets.
Is it expensive?
No. Of course, we have our side here where we prepare the submission file, but it's, as I said, it's not a very complex process. The per process costs are relatively low. We're starting sometimes a couple of $100, maybe around $1,000.
US
could
dollars?
be US dollars.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's sometimes less, sometimes a bit more, but depends a bit on the type of product and the work behind that. But it's around about this price. And ANVISA, it's interesting because many don't know this. And ANVISA is charging based on the size of the company, but not the size of the company who is applying for it. It's not a foreign manufacturer, because to sell your devices in Brazil, you need a representative.
Yeah.
And if you don't have your own company in Brazil. And the representative size counts here. So that means depending on his company size, how much he is making, what is his turnaround over the year, this counts on this. This defines the size of the company, and the size of the company defines the fee, what you need to pay. So that's the reason why many companies in Brazil, they're split up in different smaller companies, so that you reduce the fee from ANVISA, for example. So in this case, it's the same. So, but if you ask me about the fee, usually for notifications, we're talking about sometimes less than $100. Sometimes a bit more, but usually that's the range. So that's not really a high price.
Well, that's interesting, because I've done several interviews. I have never heard of a country or place that charges on a company size. So you have to reveal the company, the consultancies have to reveal their income to the ANVISA.
Exactly, but nobody is really talking about this, because it's that when you have a small company, then you maybe pay $50. If you have a multinational company, you maybe pay $1,000. So that's could be the range. So that's the reason why you need to structure your business well in Brazil.
Well, it's interesting. I think maybe do other Latin countries also have similar charges, like, I don't know, Peru or Mexico?
No, they don't have this for medical devices in this case. Usually have a fixed
only in
fee.
Brazil. Okay.
Yeah, but I cannot give you a guarantee for all countries, but
Sure.
so far as I know, usually the others working with a fixed fee.
Okay. How about you just mentioned that Brazil is one of the official languages in Brazil is Portuguese, I guess. So the documents submitted should be in like Portuguese.
No, in the past, the past is when we talk about many years ago, then it was like that. But ANVISA these days is very international. So I think many have the wrong imagination from ANVISA, maybe from the past, because today everything is digital at ANVISA. You hand everything in digitally. Of course, some mandatory documents like the instruction for use, for example, or some labeling information. Of course, they need to be in Portuguese because you are selling it in a market where everyone speaks Portuguese as first language. So this is something that you need to provide in Portuguese. But almost every documentation which will be evaluated through ANVISA, which is not part of the, let's say, communication or part of the labeling information, usually everything can be in English. So that's these days it's not really an issue any longer.
Well,
and to add this information too, ANVISA accepts all documentation in English to submission. There is no problem, or in Spanish too. And like as Mike told it to us, in the moment we need to just upload the IFU and the website of ANVISA, of course we need in Portuguese. But there is no problem if we upload first in English, since all the documents, for example, you are from China, and you have some documents like a letter of authorization, some documents need translating, to English, and there is no problem with this.
Well, so you just mentioned that ANVISA has adopted an electronic system. Has it gone electronic? So all digital platform, no more paper records, no more paper based documents.
Yeah, at the end, it's like this. It's very handy. Of course, not everything is sometimes very easy to understand. I assume that, but these days, everything is electronically. This makes it very easy to communicate with ANVISA, and it's more standardized. It's not the old days. I remember this when, especially colleagues from mine are telling me about the past, where you needed to prepare, folders over folders of documents and send it to ANVISA. But these days are over since some years, so it's really no issue. Everything's electronically these days.
So I think it's good news for foreign manufacturers trying to enter the Brazilian
Definitely.
market. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah,
and they are also harmonizing the structure of the documentation. When you look at it, in the last 3 years, for example, when they started to harmonize the contents of the documentation, and so it's especially for medical devices, that's more harmonized with international standards from IMDRF, for example. So at the end, when you look at the structure from a European technical file, from the US and from Brazil, for example, it's everything basically a very similar structure. So I wouldn't say from this perspective it's easier for manufacturers to prepare the documentation, but on the other side, more and more rules and more information are needed to be included in the technical files. That creates more complexity on the other side. But the structure itself, it's becoming more harmonized and easier to handle.
Okay, so I think it's still good news for foreign manufacturers, but
Definitely.
It takes a bit more effort for local manufacturers to catch up with the internationalized.
Maybe, yeah.
ANVISA.
Yes.
So is a product registration in Brazil valid for 10 years, right? But the BGMP certificate, the Brazilian GMP Good Manufacturing Practice certificate, must be renewed like every 2 to 4 years. Is there any progress on harmonizing these timelines to reduce the burden on manufacturers?
Yes, definitely a topic. So far, there's not a timeline yet. But for example, we have often discussions, public discussions with ANVISA about this. And we ask about it because it's the time frame itself is not harmonized, not even with international standards. So, and it's definitely seen from ANVISA that they always try to be more as harmonized as possible with international standards. For example, when we talk about standard QMS certificates with 3 years cycles, for example, or we have the max 5 life cycle from 5 years in the European Union, for example. So it's not really, it's not adapting very well to that, and there is no definite date, but it's definitely placed there, and they are thinking about it, how they could organize this. But so far, probably in the next years, we need to live with this, not harmonized, international harmonized time frame.
Okay, but is it a huge concern, a major concern for manufacturers?
Not really, because as you can see, also in depending on the market itself, if you have not a standard certificate, for example, if you're talking about a standard ISO 13485 certificate, for example, this is okay, that's harmonized internationally because of the ISO standard. But if we talk about different regulation, different markets, they are also not 100% harmonized. So at the end, manufacturers dealing very well with that. And as Brazil adopted the MDSAP proof to prove compliance with BGMP requirements, it's definitely a bit easier for them because they are not needing any additional preparation, let's say that. So they have within this audit all the requirements already covered, and they just send it into ANVISA, and ANVISA is just checking if the compliance with MDSAP in Brazil is covered. And then usually there's no extra effort in this. So it's just a renewal. Of course, you need to pay the fee, but it's not any audit or something that needs to take place there. If you don't have it, then it's a bit more, let's say, intense, because then ANVISA has also a risk-based approach to evaluate if you don't have an MD-Sub certificate. Usually when you're coming from markets like Europe or US, it's not really an issue because they accept easily these certifications. But if you're from other markets, then they're doing an internal risk-based approach evaluation. And then at the end, it could be that they make the decision, we need to make an audit on site in your company. And then, of course, this is the extra effort where you need to have extra costs. You're paying for an additional audit, and this takes time and prolongs the process a bit. It's not really difficult, but it's something what you try to avoid.
Okay, good. But I'm given to understand it's not really common for them to impose extra audits. Okay.
Of course, we participated in this in the past, definitely also in the last year. But it happens more often, honestly, not at the manufacturer itself. If you have, for example, relatively critical products, when we not talk about notification, when we talk about products from class 3 and 4, for example, vascular products, for example, then usually ANVISA is not looking on the manufacturer itself. If a critical supplier is behind that, then usually they are conducting audits at these critical suppliers. This is very common. This could happen, yeah.
Oh, okay, so the focus is on the suppliers for like class 3.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned MD-SAP, the medical device single audit program. Can you explain or expand on the program? What is it about?
Yeah, the MD-SAP, or the medical device single audit program. The approach is simple behind that. Put requirements from different markets in one audit, and Brazil is member, and Brazil accepts these audit reports. At the end, the idea is to avoid additional effort for local audits from ANVISA itself to audit the manufacturer, the foreign manufacturer. So they decided we accept these audit reports from Medical Device Single Audit Program auditing organization, that ANVISA is not need to focus on these type of manufacturers globally and create extra effort. Because the idea from ANVISA is to avoid these audits, especially when products are coming from markets that are highly regulated. They are mentioning itself in public speeches as well, to say it doesn't make sense for us to, for example, a company that has products regulated and registered in Europe, for example, and we are doing an audit again, because it's already a high standard audit that has been conducted. Why should ANVISA do an extra effort just to be there and prove it again? So that's the story behind it. So they are accepting these audit reports, that they don't need to conduct audits at foreign manufacturers.
How many countries are involved in the program? Apart from Brazil, we have Japan, right?
Yes.
And then what else?
Yeah. We have Canada, we have the US, we have Brazil, Japan, and Australia.
Right.
We are waiting all the time for the European Union. They're just they have not committed officially, although they have the same standards. So it's there's a story behind that.
So
why
the countries, they are mutually recognized, right? So for example, if you have your product registered via MD-SAP in Brazil, then when you register the product in Japan or in the US, then the local health authorities, they don't need to conduct another audit, right?
That's correct. But you need to, when you need to take care when you apply for the MD-SAP audit, you need to mention this. They need to include the scope of the countries where you pretend to sell. So you don't need to cover it. For example, if you are a Brazilian manufacturer and you want to sell your product in Japan, you just tell them, okay, conduct an MD-SAP audit. They do this, but you need to say or mention beforehand, I want to sell it in Japan. And then they exclude the scope from the others. But you cannot say afterwards, I want to sell it in the US as well, then the audit report is not valid for this market. You need to mention it before.
Okay.
Otherwise, they need to include the scope again.
Okay.
And we also have some cases of successful here in Sobel. Our clients from China, they had MDSAP, and they entered in Brazilian market by MDSAP application for GMP, and then to registration products class 3 and 4 to GMP also with MDSAP. And there is a good strategy, regulatory strategy, to keep the process more faster.
Well, I think there's got to be some kind of regulatory strategy to enable manufacturers to be qualified for the MDSAP audits. But I think we might save the strategies for later if Sobel is interested in perhaps imparting or sharing some cases with us, because I think it's really it really shows how Sobel is capable of doing this type of audits, and it really has a high threshold, I think, for other for most consultancies. Yeah, it's good to know that Sobel has a number of successful cases, and I also hear that there is this law, General Data Protection Law, in Brazil that is quite similar to those in the US and the EU, the GDPR in the EU, and the HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act in the US. And what are the specific LGPD, General Data Protection Law, here in Brazil that ANVISA reviewers are now looking for in the technical dossier? Any specific requirements?
Yeah, first of all, it's important to understand the basis for the LGPD was actually the European standard, the GDPR requirements. So at the end, when you look at them for the Brazilian part, I wouldn't say it's a one-to-one copy, but it's extremely close. So if a manufacturer already has experience with the EU regulation, then they will be very familiar with the Brazilian ones as well. So that eases the process. In general, it's important to understand that Brazil is looking very strongly to the European requirements in general, also with harmonization in terms of medical devices. You see this as well. In the inspections, what you mentioned, it definitely has consequences, especially for software products, software as medical device. It means in the past, you saw it was they focused more on the development part and the technical part. These days, they're also diving relatively deep in the cybersecurity and in the data protection laws to see how manufacturers actually solve this, especially when you think about products, they communicate. We are not talking about only a software products on a medical device itself. We are talking about products like applications, for example, that supports communication, and everyone these days has an application on its mobile phone, for example, with a lot of functions. Yeah. But of course, you need to make sure that these functions are not only working with your product and together with another medical device, but also you want to make sure that data protection laws are complied with, and the cybersecurity, and that nobody is, for example, has access to your health data. And here ANVISA is definitely looking deeper inside how you actually control this. Yeah.
So I think, but the law itself, the regulation is being revised and ever changing, right? So at this moment, there is hasn't been a clear law right now.
No, because we have ANVISA. I think you need to understand one dynamic here in the Brazilian market is we have a local market, and they are Brazil is still relatively protected from the outside.
Okay.
And this, ANVISA is taking care to have a good balance at the end, to say we have, on the one side, we try to harmonize laws like the cybersecurity and LGBT data protection laws with international standards, but the enforcement in Brazil, it takes a bit more time to be very strictly executed, because otherwise we have sometimes the issue with the local markets that the local manufacturers are not ready to comply with these standards quickly. And that's the reason why there is the theory on one side with all these new laws, but on the other side, the enforcement, the execution of these laws, it takes a bit longer. So I think it's important for manufacturers, especially foreign manufacturers, understand this, that it's important to know what, talk to us, and then we help them to be more clear what is expected from ANVISA's side.
Okay, right, that's quite clear. And there is also new rule for the new centralized national database for unique device identification in Brazil, which I believe became effective in March 2026, right? Is it like a new rules for the ISUD?
Yeah, it's the same here for harmonization, because Europe and let's say the US is for many years already using UDI codes. For Europe, it was the same. They are for quite some time, for some years now, they are a bit better prepared with the UDAMID database to comply with this and to have the better traceability of the medical devices. And Brazil is trying to harmonize this as well. So that was the chain at the end, so that they try to harmonize this as well. And since this year, they started to be effective in executing this, and devices need to be registered with the UDI codes. But you will see in terms of the technique that is behind it, it's a bit simpler than it is for example, if you compare it with the US, I think it's relatively straightforward. European has a full-blown complex code structure that they expect. And here in Brazil, they try to keep it a bit more simple, but the structure is they try to be very similar with the UDI codes and the formats that they accept. And since this year, they are really executing this and expect for high-risk class products in the beginning to be registered. And in the following years, all the rest of the medical devices, depending on the risk class, needs to be registered in this new system as well, yes.
So I just mentioned only a certain class of medical devices need to be registered with.
Yeah.
What classes?
Yeah, at the end, all, but starting this year with the high-risk class products,
so class 3
from
4.
class 4.
Class 4, okay.
And then the next wave is class 3, and the next wave 1 year later is then class 2. And let me check. I think it's a class 1 device. Is the last one is in 27 or 28. Let me confirm. Yeah, 28. They need to be registered. Yes.
Okay. Good. And I also understand that some products, some medical devices, they are like a combination of pharmaceutical products, which means drugs, and medical devices. And
yes.
Any clear definition from ANVISA for this kind of product? So should I register the product as a medical device or a drug? And what is your strategy for registering this kind of product?
Yeah, it really depends. It depends on what. When you have the device, usually predominant is what is the main indication of the device? What is the main function of the device? If it's mainly a medical device, then probably one strategy is to start to discuss, okay, let's talk with them as medical device first. If it's more, let's say, a more pharmaceutical or a drug composition and we have a supporting medical device, for example, then maybe the drug part could be the predominant indicator to start with. But usually at the end of the day, you need to regulate all of the functions, all indications of the device. So, but what's the most effective one really depends on the composition of the device. What is it? Yeah, what is mainly what? Yeah, and this is here you sit down, elaborate this, and then you start a conversation with the strategy that we figured out based on the functions, indications of the device and claims. With ANVISA, what is here a good strategy to how we can register this device. ANVISA has guidances for that, where you can orient yourself with as company. But this is, to be honest, it's sometimes at the end it's a guidance document. So at the end you need to discuss this with specialists from ANVISA to really find the final solution at the end. Yeah, because they have the same problem as you at the end. If it's something new, borderline product, for example, with different regulations applicable, then they also need to check, okay, what is the composition here of the device?
So it's a case-by-case approach.
At the end, yes. For these type of devices, definitely.
So is pharmaceutical product also regulated by the ANVISA or regulated by other departments, government departments?
Yes, ANVISA.
ANVISA as well. So okay, so you just go and talk to ANVISA and so I think it would be
it's not that easy sometimes, but yes, in theory it's like that. They're very accessible, but usually they have a centralized communication platform that they use. It works pretty well. And then usually you receive guidance from them. You make a suggestion, or you tell them what is your concern, or whatever you want to have clarified. And then usually within a few days, an expert is sending you back the response on it. And what is important to know, it's an official response. This is also important to know. It's not just simply, we think it could be like that. Yeah, it's an estimation or a suggestion. No, that's an official response that you can usually take afterwards and say, okay, you responded on my request the following, and then you can use it in your submission, for example. This is pretty helpful because sometimes when you have other regulators, take Europe in this case again. When you talk with a notified body, they are giving you maybe a response, but it's nothing official until any evaluator, a technical reviewer or something has really evaluated the whole documentation. But in your case here, it's a bit different. If you have a specific question, they can respond on that very specifically, then this is also valid and you can use it in your submissions as well.
So all the communication will be conducted on the centralized platform?
Usually because it's faster, because they organize it in this way.
Okay.
Usually you cannot talk directly with a specific person. It depends on a case by case. Who is available, what are resources on ANVISA. In the beginning I thought it's maybe a disadvantage, but over the years, honestly, I can see it's a relatively fast process. It's faster than many other processes from other countries that I know, because they have a clear ticketing system and they relate to each other, and the organization is better probably than the reputation is outside of Brazil. I think it's pretty fast process.
Yeah. So one more question now. Any response time given to the applicants? For example, in Hong Kong, they only give 14 calendar days 14 calendar days before they close your application, which means that if you cannot submit a satisfactory answer in the 14 calendar day period, then they will close your application, have to resubmit the application again. Is there such a requirement from the ANVISA?
It exists. It depends on the type of questions that I have. Because they classify this, and depending on the classification, you have different response times. But this is something you should avoid, honestly, especially for higher risk class products. As I would say, if it's just a clarification request, for example, where they just need some other information from you, it's relatively simple. There is not really it's a very short deadline to answer this. The sooner you answer,
how many days?
The earlier
they give.
The issue is more. The issue is more if you need it, that you take a lot of time. Your case is going lower and lower in the queue, so you need to wait longer until they respond again. So this is the disadvantage. So you should answer on time or in a relatively short time frame.
For example, if they're just asking for a confirmation whether you're going to import the product into this warehouse or your warehouse address. So typically, how many days of response does the ANVISA give you? Like 2 days, kind of days, 5 days?
No. They are a bit more. They are not that strict. We're talking about usually about weeks, not days. So it's a bit more flexible. But in your case, the question that you had, these questions ANVISA is not doing, especially not for submissions. Mm-hmm. This should be in the application. If it's not in the application, usually then they're coming back with a non-conformity and saying, okay, we need a clarification request here because we need additional information. And then, usually that's the case.
I think things in Hong Kong are a bit different because
probably
listing medical devices in Hong Kong is still on a voluntary basis. So they're catching up. So
really?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. No, it's at the end. At the end, they are not, especially in the first submissions. They are not very strict here because at the end, it's your product is not on the market. So it's you are the requester at the end. If you take more time, it takes more time to bring a product on the market. So they are not really concerned about this. If you have the product on the market, it's a different story. Yeah, then if we have any vigilance cases, then they are very strict here and have short time frames to answer. But everything else before bringing the product on the market, it's a bit relaxed here.
Okay, good to know that because maybe Hong Kong has a different approach and different perspective. Anyways, thank you, Maik and Flavia, for sharing with us about the ANVISA, how ANVISA works and the regulatory landscape in Brazil. These are quite practical insights, and for everyone listening or reading the transcript, we'll be featuring Sobel as a vetted specialist firm on the ElendiLabs platform. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you on the platform. If you haven't checked out our website, please head to elendilabs.com and be sure to connect with us on LinkedIn.